Hi, everybody. We are here for session 2 of Clear Equals Kind Essentials of Classroom Relationships. So I'm ready if you are. Let's go. Today we're going to talk about why is it even important? Why is it important what I say and how I say it? Yeah, we're going to talk about why. We're also going to talk about the possibility that you can change your script, your internal script that you've developed over lots and lots of years. You can shift and change how you show up with your words and with your tone and with your body with the children in your classroom. We'll also talk about the why it's effective, right? The words that we use and the way that we say what we want to say and how we say it is effective in helping children get clear and understand what it is that we're looking for and what the expectations are and more, right? We'll also talk a little bit about the difference between stern and firm, right? Sometimes it's important. We have to say, we want them to stop that behavior right now. If it's a safety issue, if somebody's getting hurt, or if they're getting hurt, or something like that, where we want to use a firm voice. Firm is different from stern, so we're going to talk about that too. And then there's pie. We're going to talk about pie. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll let that be a little bit of a surprise. So we'll get to that then. Okay. We'll also get into some real words that you can use, right? You probably have many phrases that you use that are great. So yes, keep those. And if you're editing your script and you want to say something different, what kinds of words can you use? What phrases can you use that are clear and confident and certain for children? We'll talk about that. And you can choose which ones you like or make up some new ones if you wish. Now we're going to talk about something that's a little controversial too. We're going to talk about praise. Yep. Good job. We're going to talk about that. So get ready to have your feelings hurt. If you are someone who says good job a lot, it's okay. I'm going to do it with as much kindness and respect as possible. But there's another way. And the reason why we want to describe what we see versus evaluate what we see with, we have the best of intentions. Yeah. So we'll get into that too. Then there's times to set a goal for yourself. What do you want to do between the time that you finish this webinar and you want to start the next one? So take a deep breath and let's get started. Okay, now since you probably viewed webinar 1, I'm guessing you put some things into practice. So gosh, I just wish I could talk to you right now and hear how those things are going. But let's take a moment and just pause a second or two or a minute or so and think about, what did you put into action? How did it go? Was it weird? Was it useful? Was it helpful? Did you see impact on the part of the relationship with the children in your classroom or with your colleagues? Did you notice some difficulty? Was it difficult? Was it simple? Was it fun? Right? So let's take a moment and just pause and take a moment and write down some thoughts that you had, some aha moments that you had, some things you're going to keep going and keep trying, and maybe some ideas of what you want to do differently, want to do the same. So I'll be quiet for a moment. Find your pause button, push pause, and when you're ready to come back, come on back and we'll keep going. Deep breath. Now we're back. I've had some water. I'm ready to go. All right, so what we say is important. That seems like well, of course, Amy. Yes, it is important. So, but let's just articulate, well, why? Why is that important? Yes, we want to be respectful, of course, and we want to role model kindness and respect and compassion in the way that we treat each other, the way that we talk with each other. But there are some other reasons too. Excuse me. One is that our youngest children are developing language. So they're learning from us what they hear from us and the other important adults and other children around them, how to speak like a human, how to communicate like a person, right? So the language that they hear is the language that they will use. The language that they hear, the nuances of the language that they hear, children are going to play around with that and find out what works for them. Another reason it's important is that children are developing their sense of empathy, right? So it starts very, very early. Children have an innate understanding and a sense of others around them. Most typically developing children do. And that skill of empathy is something that grows and grows as we grow and get older, right? So as children are developing and their sense of empathy, and as their skill around empathy is emerging, how we say what we say helps support that, right? It is also important what we say and how we say, because children are figuring out how to regulate their emotions. They feel these big emotions, these big feelings, and it can be overwhelming or kind of scary at times, and they're not sure how to manage. So we can come alongside and co-regulate, if you will, with our words and our tone and our body to help children know that, okay, this big feeling can feel overwhelming, but I'm not alone. Got people that are around me that'll help me, and I'm going to be okay. This big feeling will wash over and dissipate. It won't last forever, and it's part of being human, is feeling a full array of emotions, big and small, and in big ways and in small ways as well. So it assists with helping children know how to self-regulate. Now, all this to say that it's important to remember that tone, your body, facial expressions, plus the words equal the message. And we're going to talk more deeply about that shortly. Now, you'll recognize this slide from the first webinar, but it just is important enough that I want to say it again, right? It's a simple and powerful message. The way that we talk to children becomes their inner voice. Peggy O'Mara. Now, imagine what are the ways that we speak to ourselves in our heart of hearts when we're quiet or reflecting, or when we're in high emotion state, or when we are alone with our thoughts, or we're with others in our thoughts. And imagine if those things that we say to ourselves would be different. Where did we hear that? How did we learn that? I know I have internal messages that crop up when I make a mistake. I have a voice inside that can be really super critical and is kind of a jerk. And I've had to retrain that voice to say something different. It's a process that is constant. Am I right? So we're all trying to retrain and script what it is that we say to ourselves inside, and what do we say to ourselves in the quiet, right? It's big work, for sure. And remember, all of us learn from the important adults around us as we were growing up, and with some self-reflection, some vulnerability and courage that goes along with that, we can shift and change that. Does it serve us anymore? Then yeah, keep that. Does it no longer serve us? Let's edit that. We can change that. So we can all speak from some personal experience that the way that we were parented and the way that we were taught, the way that the important adults in our lives showed up becomes the way that we parent and teach. So beyond just the things that we say to ourselves in our own heads and in our own hearts, what comes out of our mouth, what comes out of the way that we use our body and our tone is often a reflection of the important adults in our own lives growing up. So our personal experience shapes and forms who and how we show up as adults. And that's a big statement. I know it's a big statement that I said there. So we can either choose to continue that or choose to say something different. Many of us may have had some phrases and some ways that the important adults showed up for us as a kid that we want to keep, right? I think of a particular grandmother, my Grandma Smith, and when I hear her voice and the things that she taught me and the way that she spoke to me, that fills my heart with gladness and confidence and curiosity and a little bit of mischief, right? And then there are other important adults voices that come in, and I could say, yep, I know exactly where that came from, and no thank you to that. Not anymore. We can extend a little grace because we can think, where did they learn that? Right? And where did they learn that? And so on and so on and so on. Right? How powerful it is that we're in a position now to make changes. How important it is to make changes so that children that we are showing up for as their important adult can absorb those messages that will empower them going on and going forward. Now we're speaking about language, that kind of internalized language and how we show up for children and how adults showed up for us. That's kind of a big concept. So if you need to pause and think about that or go get some water and come back, please feel free to do this, to do that. We're shifting now to the power of our words. And I'm thinking in this particular circumstance, the language that we use to talk with each other as colleagues about the children that we work with, or the words that we use to talk about the children that we work with to families, or maybe even the words that we use to talk to children about them, about themselves. So they're incredibly powerful. Like, as I say these words, imagine like what feelings come up for you, what generalizations does our brain immediately go to, which is natural to happen when I say each of these words, right? So strong-willed. That little girl was so strong-willed, you should have seen such and such. Wild. That group of boys on the playground are just wild. What about dramatic? Look at all, okay, here we go. So much drama. Look how dramatic that child is. You sure are talkative. What about forceful? Bossy? Loud? Dreamy? Shy? Now, as you say these words, and as I kind of gave some examples of how we might use them, there are lots of different ways that we can use these words and these phrases that go around these words as we're talking to children about them or talking to others about particular children. Oftentimes, all of these words have some sort of connection with. Maybe we were called that when we were kids, or we have an idea of what we mean when we say dramatic or bossy or loud or dreamy or talkative. Or we might use phrases that aren't on this list that have a connotation that's maybe not so positive, right? Okay, now let's just flip them. What if instead of strong-willed, we said persistent? What if instead of wild, we said energetic, right? Instead of dramatic, we said passionate. Instead of, bossy, we said clear, direct. We use the word animated, contemplative, and thoughtful. So it may be that this particular list has a different nuance to it, right? For example, would you rather be called bossy or would you rather be called clear and direct? Would you rather be called dreamy or would you rather be called contemplative? Now, it depends on the individual, absolutely. And get this, the words that we choose to describe what it is that we see or what it is that we experience influence how we feel and how we show up in a particular circumstance, right? So it could be when I'm talking about a kid that is shy, there might be a story that I've made up in my head about shy people, right? If I shift and change that word to thoughtful, I've got a different story in my head. And that impacts the choices that we make going forward. right? So something to think about. What words do we use to describe and to talk about what's happening in the classroom right then and there, right? If we say that it is really wild in here today, we're going to see wild. When we say it's really energetic in here today, we're going to see energy. And that story that we make up about what's wild and what's energetic, those two stories may be similar, but they're different, right? So one we might not have as much grace or much patience with than maybe the other, right? So let's pause and write about that for a second. If you have your workbook with you, you'll see those words. Feel free to add some more words that you might maybe you yourself use frequently to describe what's happening in the classroom, either one or two particular children or the classroom as a whole. Pause and write, is there another way or another word that I could use to describe it? So right now we're focusing on just the words and the language that we use, that and the impact that the words that we use and the choices of words that we use influence the way that the decisions that we make going forward, right? So it can take us down this direction, and it could also take us down this direction. Something to think about. So take a deep breath, pause the video, and come back when you're ready. Okay, we're back. Deep breath. All right, now get this. Have you ever had moments when you say something and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I sound just like my mom, or I sound just like my great aunt Dottie, or oh, I sound like my second grade teacher, Miss Fox. Y'all might remember Miss Fox from webinar 1. Anyway, so when you're tired or hungry, irritated, those voices come right out of our mouth. Am I right? Great Aunt Dottie just comes straight out of your mouth. Rest her soul. She learned from her people the way that she spoke to me as a child. I decided pretty early on, yeah, no, I'm not going to talk to people like that. We all have people like that in our lives. We do. So let us not continue that generational gift. We can shift and change it. And I can't underline the truth of the matter for sure is that it takes so much courage to self-reflect in this particular area and to make shifts and changes, right? It's really helpful, almost it's necessary to have others around us that we respect and that we love, and we know they love and respect us to help us with that. Do you have the people around you who are not afraid and are brave and love us and respect us enough to tell us when, hey, you said that thing again, or hey, this is how it came across. Is that what you were going for? Right? Who are those people that you can depend on to help you out with that? So it is true, we can flip that script. I can take what I heard from my great Aunt Dottie and change it into something else. Does it serve me anymore? Yes, no. If not, I can flip it, right? Take some work, take some dedication to do that, but it is true that you can. Okay, so take a deep breath because I'm about to just dive deep into your heart. Here's the thing. I invite you to think about a phrase that you heard as a child that you want to eliminate, right? Think about that phrase. And most of us have a few phrases that come to mind right away, right? So think about that phrase. Was it true? Was it kind? Was it helpful? Right? I've got a phrase, and I'll be bold, I'll just be brave and bold and tell you what a phrase that comes to my head that I heard as a child that I worked to eliminate. And that was, Amy, look ashamed. Even just saying it out loud now just kind of hurts my heart a little bit, right? I'm okay. I did all the work around it. I'm good now. But in investigating, where did that phrase come from? And what was the intention behind that, right? I won't go into it all because this is not that kind of session. But I invite you to do that for yourself, or write down who can you connect with to talk through this with. Maybe you have a sibling, or somebody else who maybe had a similar experience, or maybe someone who didn't, who you trust enough to talk through about it. What is that phrase that you heard as a child that you want to eliminate, right? I didn't want to say to my daughters, look ashamed. I didn't want to say, oh, come on, to the children in my life. I wanted to say something different. But I had to do the work to decide, was it true? Was what I did worthy of feeling shame? No. Was it kind to say that to a child? No. Was it helpful? No. So if you could say no to these, it's time to edit. So it's time to pause and write that phrase down. Full permission, if you want to write that phrase down on a piece of scrap paper so that you can tear it up, burn it, shred it, bury it in the backyard, as you wish. But we're going to take that phrase and we're going to flip it on its head. And we're going to come up with something different that we want to say to ourselves. And with practice saying it to ourselves, it will more easily come out of our mouth instead of that old great Aunt Dottie phrase that no longer serves us and just doesn't serve anybody. Okay, so find your pause button, push pause, pen to paper, and write that down. Now we're back. Deep breath, everybody. I realize what I just asked you to do can bring up loads of feelings, right? So if you need to pause again and make sure that you write down who is that person, who is that real life person that you can have the conversation with to talk through what just came up for you, right? Some of us may have a bigger emotional response to that than others. And so I'm here to say that that connection to resources, and whether it's a good friend or a partner, or maybe even a therapist or a coach that you can talk through that with, I just recommend highly that you have other people that you can connect with about this. Sometimes that particular work and that particular prompt can bring feelings that maybe you haven't felt in a very long time. So as I've glossed, it feels like I've glossed over that in a very short amount of time. Know that I recognize that that type of work can be intense. Not always, but it can be. So I want to extend to you a recommendation to give yourself some grace and give yourself some time to consider what you're going to shift and how you're going to shift it. Okay? And with that, let's all take a deep breath. Okay. Positive phrasing is also effective. Oh, it's so dramatic and mysterious. Ta-da! Okay, positive phrasing is also effective because not only for the reasons we talked about earlier, but positive phrasing invites cooperation, right? It's helpful to know what you need from me. What do you expect? How can I be helpful, right? So when we phrase things in a positive, it helps children understand, okay, we are cooperating, we're working together, right? It also adds to clarity, right? So we all can agree that young children really appreciate clarity, and that clarity is really helpful for young children who are still developing language, who are still learning how to process language and decision making on what will I do in response to what my teacher said. Okay, so that clarity can be helpful for them as they're learning and growing. Okay, clear, true, brief. That's what we're getting at. Okay, next, it's positive phrasing is effective when we deliver it as a statement. Now, get this. Many of us, most of us, have done this ourselves, and we see people do this around us. Families do this too. When we deliver as a question, when our voice goes up at the end, right? Sometimes we may say something like, get in the car, which is a question, right? Instead of time to get in the car, time to get in the car. Da, 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 da. When our voice goes down at the end or is a little lower rather than high, then that is clear and helpful. Okay, okay, it's time to get in the car. I got it, right? Now, young children might say, do I want to or not? Or do I want to run? Okay, that's another matter. But our positive phrasing is there. It's time to get in the car. Dun, 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 dun. Clear, direct. Next, remember to deliver as a statement. Yes, the going down, taking our voice just a little bit lower, and be mindful and self-reflective to listen to yourself and to listen. Am I asking a question with the tone of my voice, or did I straight up ask a question? Are you ready to go? Nope, and they run the other way. Are you finished with dinner? Yes, and then they get down and go, right. So sometimes we might ask a question when we really know the answer that we want to receive, and then when we don't get that answer, just everybody gets frustrated. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so deliver as a statement those things which are statements. What is the expectation? The expectation is this. Okay. Next, we don't mean to, but sometimes we give a choice when there's really not a choice. So when we can remember, when we give a choice when there's not a choice, is disrespectful and it's confusing, right? So are you ready to go when there's really not a choice of staying or going? Is confusing and it's kind of disrespectful. So when we could say, we could throw in a choice there. It's time to go. Would you like to get in the car on the driver's side or the passenger side? Which one? Right? So we can insert choice, right? And in a webinar coming up later, we're going to talk about how to offer choices, right? And practicing making fun choices throughout the day so that they kind of build their choice making muscle, if you will. But now we're not talking about that yet. We're talking about positive phrasing and its effectiveness, right? So when we give a choice when there's not one, it's just disrespectful. It's confusing. So notice when you give choices and when are the times when there's not really a choice, right? Okay. So this little bit is inspired by Janet Lansbury. She has a podcast called Unruffled. I recommend that 100%. She has a few books that she's written, No Bad Kids, and I would recommend anything she writes and anything she talks about. Talk about professional crushes. I've got one on Janet Lansbury. I learned from her lots of things, but in particular, the difference between stern and firm. And maybe you've thought about this already, but if you haven't, let's think about it again together. When you think about stern, what comes to mind? Okay. When we think about firm, what comes to mind? What's the difference? Well, get this. Stern often comes along with some body language, some body nuances that go along with the words, right? Often it can look like this. The face is set a little more hard. The body is set a little more rigid, right? And we want to be stern. This is what's going to happen, and this is happening. Now, I could say kind of the same thing in a firm voice that is not as hard, because get this, children can read between the lines, and sometimes it can be confusing when their important adult is coming across in a stern way that can feel like, oh, ouch, or I'm going to respond to that by shutting down or running or falling into a tantrum or a meltdown. So it can not help us get to where we want to be when we're coming from a stern place, right? Also, stern can mean rough, right? And it's easy to slip into an approach that's more rough than we intend, right? Or that is helpful. Okay, so firm, you could say the same thing with clarity, with an open face and an open body, with a kind face, but a clear declaration of this is what is happening. It's time to go now. Right? So I'm not stern, I'm not mad about it, nobody's in trouble. And all of that can be communicated through my tone and the way I hold my body, right? I'm clear, confident, certain, I'm calm, I'm not dysregulated myself, right? So it's all the C words: clear, confident, calm, certain, right? What a relief to our young children when we ourselves, as their leader, are clear, confident, calm, and certain. How I can relax into that. Now, does that mean they will always go along with it? No, not necessarily. It's the young child's work to figure out, okay, where are the boundaries? What are the limits? What is it that is my person saying to me? How are they saying it? What do they mean? Do they mean something different? They're still learning all of those nuances, right? And some children can understand and recognize those nuances more easily than other children and adults, right? So let us pause and write a moment about what do you see as the difference between stern and firm? How might you describe your own self? Like, would you describe when you have to give a direction or a declaration of what is happening or what is about to happen? How would you describe it? Would you describe it more on the stern side or more on the firm side, right? What's your face doing when you're making that declaration? This is also helpful to have another person who could say, yeah, your face is open, or yeah, you have a face that you do when you're saying it's time to come in from the playground, you do this with your eyebrows. Good information to know. Not always comfortable to receive, but really useful. Okay, so pause and write a little bit about the difference between stern and firm, and how does that look? How does that show up in your day today with children, right? Clear, confident, calm, certain. What do you think about that? So find that pause button, hit pause, write down your thoughts, and come on back when you're ready. Okay, deep breath. Now here's where we were getting at pie. I told you there'd be pie. Well, here it is. Now you probably noticed that I've touched on tone. You've heard me talk about words. You've heard me talk about body, right? So hopefully this will help us put it all together, right? We spent a lot of time on the words that we use, right? The script that we learned and how we're going to flip it and say it differently, right? Yes, you could start with the words, just the basic words that we use. Okay, that's cool. Great start. And get this, that is only 7% of any message that you communicate with someone else. 7% is carried by the words, right? Anybody ever misunderstood somebody when they sent a text, right? Get this. Using a period at the end of a sentence can come off as aggressive on a text. Did you know that? You probably knew that. I didn't know that until my daughters told me that, right? Also, capital O, capital K, period, is not okay. I got a response once when I responded, okay, capital O, capital K, period. And the response was, what? why are you mad? Yeah. So it carried a tone with it that was not intended because it was just the words. Learning, right? So we can add things to our words in our texts and in our email, right? Emojis or pictures or something creative to add some tone to it, right? To more clearly define what it is that I'm trying to say, right? When you're communicating in a method that just is words, texts, email, right? Those are primarily just words, right? Hard to add in and hear and get the tone, right? So speaking of tone, that carries 38% of our message. So hooray, we're getting there, getting to more clarity of communicating from what I want to say and what I want you to hear and understand. So tone is the way that we use our voice. In text or email, it's images maybe that we can add, or punctuation or something like that. Think about all the ways that we add tone to the way that we're saying what we're saying, right? That carries a lot and informs the person receiving the message. It informs them of what it is that we're trying to say, you see? Now, get this, 55% of the message is carried by our body, right? So I could say, I'm fine, with open hands. My words say, I'm fine. My tone says, I'm fine. And my hands and my body say, I'm fine. Or my words could say, I'm fine. My tone can say, I'm fine. But my body can say, I'm not fine. And it's kind of like this. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Am I fine? No. Now, most typically developing people can see the difference, right? And sometimes are confused, but can kind of figure it out depending on the context. That comes from a lot of practice, right? And a lot of trust in the relationship, you see? So if we pause and we think about the important people in our lives and how we communicate, where does the communication break down? Often you'll see that there's a breakdown in communication when there's a mismatch between words and tone and body, or when there's an absence of tone or an absence of clear body expression when we're communicating, right? Now I'm talking about, right now we're talking about typically developing people. Now most of us will have children in our classroom or adults in our lives or ourselves are neurodiverse. So that makes this pie chart a little bit different, right? So often, more weight is carried by the words to someone who is neurodivergent because they're still learning about tone and body and learning about when does it match, when does it mismatch, understanding the full expression of what a human is trying to, a human being person is trying to communicate. You see? And when there's a mismatch, that mismatch might be missed. You see what I'm saying? So, how important it is that our words and our tone and our body all come together and match so that I could say I'm fine with my words and my tone and my body all matching, and it's clear that I'm fine, or I'm okay with that, or yes, I'd love to come over for dinner, right? When my words, my tone, my body match, it's much more easily understood by everybody. Neurodiverse, typically developing, right? Okay. So when our words and our nonverbal cues are in conflict, most people who are typically developing will believe the nonverbal, right? So when our words say, I'm fine, and our body says, or our tone says, I'm not fine, people will believe the nonverbal most of the time, right? Sometimes people who are neurodiverse may hear the words, and if there's a mismatch, they will miss the mismatch and believe our words. And that can lead to miscommunication, right? So again, underlining the importance of our tone and our body and our words coming in together in unity to communicate our message. I'm gonna take a deep breath and I'm gonna have some more. I invite you to do the same. Okay, so now let's talk about some helpful phrases. What do they sound like? So you probably you're coming to this webinar probably with some phrases that you are your go-to phrases, right? Amyisms are phrases that people might hear me say frequently. You probably have them too. So think about, what are those? What are some of the phrases that you've used that work really well? And you want to keep those, right? Now, if you're here looking for some more phrases or how to integrate more helpful phrases, more positive phrasing into your connection or your relationship with children, here's some help, right? So helpful phrases can sound like this. You may, and then say what they can do. You may put your work on the rug, or you may choose to sit wherever you'd like, right? Let others know what's expected, like what's okay to do, right? It's really helpful to know what to do versus what you want me to stop doing, right? Okay, next one, let's, and then clearly define what is expected to do together. Let's walk together to the bathroom, or let's hold hands as we go to the playground, or let's gather our things for pickup, right? Next, I noticed that both of you want to play the blocks. There's only one set of blocks. I notice you both want to turn. Say what it is that you notice. It's so helpful. Right? It doesn't insert us as the adult, as the person that is necessary to come in and figure it out, but it gives the children an opportunity to go, yep, right. I do, that's right. You did notice that we both want the blocks, or that we both want to turn, or whatever it is. So there's a there at the beginning of that dialogue is agreement, right? So I noticed that. It doesn't put any judgment. No, here, I'm going to fix it for you. But it's helpful to say, here's what I see. Here's what I notice. Sometimes it gives the children an opportunity to say, no, actually, no, teacher, that's not what's happening. And you can get to clarity, which is helpful, right? Okay, another helpful phrase is it's time to. It's time to pack away lunch. It's time to get ready to go outside. It's time to come to gathering. It's time to whatever it is, right? Now, here's where I'd like to offer a recommendation for adaptation for any children. Really helpful to children who are figuring out time and understanding how to experience time. Like, what does 5 minutes feel like? What does 1 minute feel like? What does 30 minutes feel like? Lunch is 30 minutes. What does 30 minutes feel like? How long is that? Right. So there's a device, a tool called a time timer. You can get them in lots of different places. But reach out to me if you want some links for resources to find that. And I have found that that tool has been so helpful to children and teachers, to be helpful in saying, oh, yes, we had 5 more minutes until we transitioned to this. And the time timer is, there's no longer red there. Now you're wondering, what's that red? So a time timer looks like a clock, and it has a dial on it. So you can dial it so that the red piece, it's like a little piece of pie, goes to 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, right? And the children can see the red pie piece disappearing as time progresses. So they could see, oh, there's a bigger sliver of red, I'm still eating. Oh, the sliver of red is smaller, I need to finish. Oh, this sliver of red is gone. Oh, it's time to, we're finished, right? So time timers are really helpful. So there you go. There's a little rabbit trail. Now we're back. Okay. Another helpful phrase can sound like we are, and then say what we're doing, what the expectation is. We are cleaning up now. We're taking out our lunch now. Oh, we're finished. We're finishing with snack. Oh, we're doing such and such. We're putting our boots on the shelf. Here's what the expectation is, right? Next is please do. And again, this one's kind of connected to you may. It's less offering permission, right? Or extending permission to a child, but it's a declaration of what the expectation is. Please do. Please walk to the gate. Please hang your coat on the hook. Please put your dishes in the bin. Please come stand by me. Please hold my hand, right? What is it that you are trying to say? It's helpful to ask, to clearly say what it is, and adding please, role models, courtesy. Okay. Deep breath. Feel free if you want to take a pause and write down some of those phrases that work for you. Maybe you want to add some more to this list of helpful phrases. So if you want to pause here, now is a good time because we're about to shift gears a little. Okay, evaluative and descriptive praise. Remember I told you at the beginning that it might hurt your feelings a little bit when we talked about this? I hope not. But check it out. I've had so many teachers and so many school leaders after we've talked about this particular concept just go, oh, I'm so seen by this and I'm embarrassed, right? It's okay because me too. I'm a recovering good jobber, right? Early in my career, I heard from my people growing up, good job, felt good to hear. And so I continued to say good job to children and others with great frequency until I learned a different way. So check it out. There's a difference between evaluating praise and descriptive praise, right? So let's dive into the differences. Excuse me. So evaluative praise, is when we extend an affirmation that has an evaluation to it, right? It means that there is an end product and a standard to which you must measure up. And that's a quote from Joanne Nordling. You know how I love her. So that's evaluative praise. Good job is my evaluation of your job. I think it's good. Oh, pretty painting. Meant with the best of intentions. I may believe that it is pretty, right? But in our role as teacher, as educator, we really want to help our child develop that inner voice so that when we're not there and they create a painting or they do something, that they could say to themselves, that's pretty. I think that is pretty. I ran really fast. I ran so far. I am smart. I am beautiful. I am. So they can say it to themselves. You see what I mean? When we extend evaluative, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's look at descriptive. So descriptive, so that's evaluative praise. Descriptive praise, it focuses on the process, right? You worked really hard on that. That puzzle took a long time. Wow, you were really focused on that. I notice. Narration comes under descriptive praise, right? Nobody fails at the process. Yeah, I did use a lot of red. Yes, I did concentrate a long time. So nobody can really argue with descriptive praise. You can argue with evaluative praise. So when we extend that evaluating praise, like good job or pretty painting or whatever we want to put an evaluation on, there can be argument about that. Like, well, I don't think that's a pretty painting that I painted that you think is beautiful because I was painting a hurricane or I was painting a monster. And you think it's pretty? That's weird, right? So can be some disagreement, right? Or that's not their intention, right? Or we may say, oh, good, oh, good job, good job, good job. And it loses any kind of authenticity, right? If everything's good, then everything's the same. So I'm a kid and I don't believe you so much, right? And we want them to know that they can believe us, right? Okay. So that's what I want to say about evaluating praise. Is there something else? Yeah, it's open to argument. Oh, and yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that. Alfie Kohn is a great person to dive into and listen to. He writes about and speaks about. His book is Punished by Rewards. It's a classic. It's an oldie but a goodie. So I recommend that if you haven't read it yet, or find him speaking on YouTube and hear him speak about how we inadvertently, and we don't mean to, create children, create a society who grows reliant and dependent on evaluative praise because they haven't developed their own inner voice that can tell themselves, yeah, I worked really hard on that. I did that. I feel that, right? So they begin to perform for that affirmation, for that evaluation, right? As they grow older, they will continue to seek that. Is this dress pretty? Do you like my hair? Right? What do you think about this piece of art? My ability to believe my work of art is good is connected to if you think it's good. And that's not what we're about, right? We want our children to make that piece of art and look at it and say, yeah, that's good. I feel confident about that. Now, a way to support that kind of inner voice developing is by using descriptive kind of praise, where we describe what we see, right? That's a lot of red. Ooh, red and blue and purple and green and yellow, all the colors. What would you name this? Where would you like to put this painting? You and Zoe worked together to move that heavy table. You had to really work hard for that. I saw your muscles really engaged to pick up that heavy, heavy table. You did run fast. You ran all the way to that tree and back. Deep breath. I see you breathing really heavy. Your heart must be beating so fast. So we are describing what it is that we see, right? Your eyebrows are scrunched together. Are you upset? We describe what we see instead of evaluating, right? Your face, your smile is so big. You must be happy. You look like you feel proud. So see, there are ways that we can offer vocabulary of phrases that they can internalize, like your face looks really happy. They can think to themselves, oh, yeah, it's happy. So that internal voice begins to match what it is that they feel. Or they'll tell us, I'm not happy, I'm excited, or I'm not happy, I'm annoyed, right? Anybody's worked with 4-year-olds? You get it. And as they reach that second plane of development in lower elementary, the clarity, trying to find the perfect word to describe what it is that they're feeling or experiencing or what it is that they want to communicate becomes really important, right? So for those of you who work with school-age children, you'll probably see more of this, and so important to use that describing affirmation versus evaluative. Now, what you may notice is that some children, even really young children, have already grown dependent on the opinions of others. So it might throw them for a loop if you don't say that they did a good job. You might have a child who will say, did I do a good job? Do you like it? Right? So it can become a habit that might be difficult to break. And it could be you're already on the describing praise train. And if so, yeah, way to go. Notice over the next couple of weeks, just take some data. How often am I saying that? What do I say? How do I say it? How's it coming across? So with that, let's pause and write down some of your thoughts. And some of your thoughts might be the first one is like, Amy's a jerk and hurt my feelings because I say good job and I don't think it's that bad. It's okay. So give yourself some time to write it down. What do you think about that? Now, is saying good job to a child gonna break their spirit? No. I want us to consider what is our go-to, right? Are we saying good job so much that it loses its authenticity? Does it rob the child of an opportunity to build that internal voice, that intrinsic motivation to work hard, to paint something that is beautiful to them, right? So, time to pause and you write. So I'm gonna be quiet. Find your pause button and come back when you're finished. Okay, now we're back. Deep breath. I also hope during these pauses when you're writing that you take an opportunity to get up and move and stretch. So if you haven't done that yet, do that right now. So if you haven't stretched your arms in a bit, or if you haven't stood up and stretched your body, or stretched your back, or stretched your legs, push pause again and stretch your body, right? Okay, and now we're back. We're coming to the end of our second of a several part series of Clear Equals Kind. So I wonder, are there lingering questions or lingering situations that you want help with now? So here's a way to connect with me, amywilliamsacademy@gmail.com. That's my email. Reach out if you have questions or if you have thoughts or feedback. I'd love to hear what you think about what we talked about today. That ongoing dialogue just really fills me. So feel free to do that. I'd love to hear. So now's the time. Write down that plan. So what's your thing? What are you going to do? What is that one thing that you plan to do in the coming weeks or in the time between viewing this webinar and starting the next one? All right. Write that thing down and put a date on it. Bonus, if you want to say, who is that person that's going to check in with me on that? Hey, Amy, did you do the thing that you wrote down that you were going to do last week? Yes, I did, or no, I didn't, and I'm going to do it today. So take a moment now, pause if you need to, and write that down. Again, here are the books that I have available, my SoSumo books that are social stories that I've created and written for you, for educators to use in the classroom. They have lots of prompts, so you can actually practice asking a friend to play. You can practice taking a deep breath, getting some water, moving your body when you have a big emotion. You can practice being the upstander. You can practice listening to someone's firm, clear no, or their enthusiastic yes, right? And then I've got my journal there for educators as well. I want to say thank you so much for joining me. You did it. This is part 2. You did it. We've got 3 more to go. And until the next time, I hope everything's well. Take it easy.